Welcome to the show. I'm just double checking that I'm live, but everything seems to be good. Looks like we've got solid stream health. I've got the lights on. I've got energy. I've got personality, and I can sing. Just kidding. I can't really sing. And what else? We've got you here. It's always fun to have a live show with actual audience members. I'm just posting to social media that I am going live. That's the kind of stuff I need to do these days. And then we'll get started. We've got a lot to talk about. This is going to be a good show. I say that every week, but most of the time I've always been lying. This time, it's an actual good show. I've got a bunch of interesting comics to talk about. We've got some really big news of the week to discuss with each other. And I've got a drawing that I think I've laid out like pretty solid that I'll be inking that's going to look really cool. Let's see who we've got here in the chat. We've got Dr. Doom. I'm going to call the Fantastic Four about that. We've got Daryl Grant, Andrew Jefferson, Michael DeFonte, Sam Fonseca, Callisto91, Uros Velikovic, I think, Moritaka. I haven't seen you in a little while, Murtaka. Nice to see you again. Jacob Murch, Pensador, Hannah, Ken Byrne, A-Man, and there's my sister, Oreo and Jeannie. Jim, there you go. No fake mustache, Jim. Or is there? Hi. My name is Caius Martius Tropes. All right, that's a reference to my latest video. We've also got El Torito, Leonardo, Jackdaw, Steve Sorensen, Nova69, Sebastian Orduz, Connor. Look at all of this. Sean Williams. I can't keep up. I'd spend the whole episode just listing names. It's lovely to have so many people here today. It's growing every week. So appreciate you guys checking it out for the first time. Appreciate people coming back. We're going to have some fun conversation today because seriously, there's a lot of good comics to quickly review. I'm just going to give brief reviews of what I've read this week. That's the first segment of my show. And then I'm going to start sort of drawing, inking, and we'll talk about news of the week because there's some really interesting comic book news of the week. But hello also to Eminem, Sir Mr. Howell, Terry Owen, Jamillan, Brian. Awesome. So, let's get into it. First book I read this week. I've been trying to sort of get into some more mainstream stuff lately. I've just been like, where is Marvel and DC at? I'm not always as plugged in as I used to be. So, I was like, well, this looks like an interesting event comic, right? Devil's Reign. I have liked stuff that I've read by Chip Zdarsky. He's a really talented writer, really good with dialogue, I think, and big ideas. And I had not really come across too much of Marco Checchetto before I read their stuff together on Daredevil. He's fantastic. I love this sort of nice detailed style, but kind of grounded and realistic. As far as this issue goes, it's interesting. I'm engaged. I will say I do have a little bit of a problem that I have with a lot of event comics. And, let me pause. I'll always pause when there is a super chat. Steve, thank you so much. Virtual high five to you. And that is when it's an event, typically there isn't necessarily one central protagonist. It's usually a group of heroes, maybe even a group of villains. And it tells interesting events that are happening, right? There's interesting scenes. But as far as a narrative arc where I can sort of follow one character moving from where they are at the beginning to where they are at the end, even if it's a small change, a change in perspective, there isn't a lot of that. I would say ostensibly either Daredevil or Luke Cage is the central character. I guess Luke Cage, for this particular story, the superheroes are having him run for mayor against the Kingpin. The Kingpin is trying to outlaw vigilantes in New York. And, all I can say is I'm enjoying this for the artwork. It's really good there. But I'm having a hard time connecting, right? And maybe that sounds shallow, but I think as I get older, I do look for deeper stories. That's all. So it's fine. I feel like if you're already reading, say, Daredevil, that this is interesting supplementary material. But if you're just reading this like I am, it's a little shallow in a sense. It's good, but it's not amazing. Hello to Mapna, Lawrence, and JLC. Let's keep going. I picked this up because last week I picked up X Lives of Wolverine, and I think it's going back and forth. I don't know how many issues, but like one week is X Lives of Wolverine, and the next is X-Deaths of Wolverine. I liked X Lives of Wolverine. It sent his consciousness back into the past to go on adventures in like sort of his previous iterations, we'll say, but with his current wisdom. This one doesn't seem to like really be about Wolverine at all yet. Instead, it follows Moira McTaggart, and I could follow it because I've been reading the X-Men comic. But if you haven't read X-Men right now, you'd probably be a little bit lost as to exactly what's happening with her. She's basically on the run from Mystique, a supervillain, if I could just boil it all down. But then there's also this sort of weird, futuristic Wolverine that's revealed right at the end that's like coming after the X-Men. And yeah, so he's sort of got like all this cybernetic stuff on him. I don't know if that's Wolverine or like a Sentinel or what. It reminds me a little of when Wolverine got those hot claws for a few months. Remember? For a little while he had hot adamantium claws, which supposedly they could already cut through everything, so I don't know what good hot was. I wasn't as into this as I was the Lives of Wolverine, but we'll give it another chance in 2 weeks, I think. This one I did enjoy, though. I can't say that there's a ton of Dynamite comics that I read, but when I do, I do appreciate who they've got as talent behind it. And this one is written by Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Connor. Great power couple. Great artists, but also really good writers. And the artwork by Moritat. You know, it's Red Sonja, so you kind of want it to be a little bit sexy. It is that. But you also want adventure and fantasy, and it hits that too. What it does on top of that I kind of like is it is kind of funny. The Connor and Palmiotti really get into this character, and this isn't a great phrase for her, but she Red Sonja is a son of a bitch. You know, she's tough as nails, but she's such a jerk sometimes to people. But she does have like nobility and stuff, and she's kind of in over her head. The gimmick to this series, the Invincible Red Sonja, it's a story where a wizard has cursed her with immortality. Although that curse will eventually wear off. And this scene here, she was caught in basically a volcano, and she's painfully emerging from like the ash. She's like being reborn from being just totally burnt to a crisp. It's pretty intense stuff. But anyway, this is kind of funny. The artwork is really, really nice. Sorry, it just always opens in the middle to this these pinups. They know who their audience is, right? But it's good. It's real good. I do recommend that one. Maybe Wolverine merged with Warlock. Technically possible. Like I say in that issue, it's following Moira McTaggart. Mystique and Destiny did cut off her arm, but Warlock gave her a piece of the techno-organic machinery to like recreate her hand, so maybe it has something to do with that. Don't know. I'm still enjoying House of Slaughter. You could say that this is a spin-off of Something is Killing the Children, but you could also really just call it another chapter, but just a side story that's following Aaron Slaughter and Jace Boucher, two people from the monster hunting house that Erica Slaughter is from. She's the main character in Something is Killing the Children. Lots of flashbacks, and it's a good story. This is a love story, and it's a tragic love story because these guys are... This book is really showing just how truly awful the House of Slaughter is. They hunt monsters, but they're just ruthless with their own members. They raise their members to be sociopaths. It's pretty terrible. And so this love story that's at the heart of it, like, you know, with such damaged people, is really good, actually. I'm into it. The only thing I wish it had was new monsters. We're still seeing the same monsters we saw at the beginning of Something is Killing the Children, and I really think that this book and this world could grow if they could show us some other interesting new monsters. I really think that would help. Cup Creation says, "Hey Chris, Unparalleled Universe, a toy review channel, was raving about your channel the other night on his live stream. Thought you'd appreciate knowing that." That is nice. I have to admit I haven't heard of that, so I'll have to check that out. Let me take a quick pause and just say, like, the show, Comic Tropes, not really pros and cons, but my other show, Comic Tropes, has been getting quite a bit of notice from just new people, and that's lovely to sort of welcome in a new audience that appreciates comics for the storytelling medium and can, like, interact with all of us, and we can learn from them and they can learn from us, and we can talk about an art form that we all really like, a storytelling medium that we all really, really like. This morning, or maybe it was yesterday, but it's hard to say with Australia time, the show The Weekly Planet, their latest podcast, those guys were nice enough to give a plug to my show and say that they've been listening to that. That really helps, exposing it to new people. That's really, really nice. It was only like a couple weeks ago that the wrestler Evil Uno had on Eddie Kingston on his show, and then they talked about my show. So, it's just nice. It's really nice that, like, the show is getting a little more traction with new people, that it hasn't just sort of like plateaued. That's nice. Hello, Daniel. I'm doing very, very well. You've been burned by Tynion's work. Well, I haven't read a ton of his work. I read like a little of his Batman, and I wasn't super into it, but I did like Something is Killing the Children and House of Slaughter. I do like that quite a bit. I think that there's a lot of him in it. So Thor has been getting a lot of buzz. I think it's fair to say. I hadn't really been reading it, but it was getting so much buzz, I picked up the last two issues, 20 and 21. I think that these are both variant covers, actually. I know this one is. This one might be. This book had a variant cover. This went on sale this week, okay? And there was variant covers going on eBay for up to like $300. And they were selling for like over $200. So I don't know if that $300 one sold, but they were selling within the week, within that day that it went on sale. Certain variant covers were selling for ungodly amounts. I haven't seen that in a while, and I get nervous when there's a lot of speculation behind comics. I like gimmick covers. I like cool new villains and heroes and stuff. I like that stuff. I do get a little nervous when I see the prices for comics skyrocketing right away, because I feel like that's bringing in an audience that may just be trying to speculate. I saw this in the 90s when they realized that it isn't going to always like flip fast, that they're going to constantly be able to make money. A lot of those people will pull out. There's not enough money there for short-term gains. That's not what it's built for. There can sometimes you're lucky. Sometimes you picked up 2 issues because you thought it was going to be something special, and maybe you can sell one and get a little bit of money. Cool. Fine. And if you like collecting variant covers, I get it. I just get nervous if I see the speculator community fed into too much. But that's just my own nerves. What's the story about? In Donny Cates' Thor is now the king of Asgard, so he's got new responsibilities. He's been having trouble lifting Mjolnir, and sometimes other people can lift Mjolnir. That's not normal. So there's something weird going on behind it. And at the end of issue 20, he comes to he's seen various parts of his kingdom have been destroyed by somebody using Mjolnir. He found a part of America that was destroyed by him, where he used to have New Asgard for a little while. His hammer Mjolnir hits him, and who's holding it? This new character, an electric being that claims she is Mjolnir. Well, that's kind of weird. This issue is the one that's going crazy, as it sort of explains who this new villain is. To a degree, yes, it is the living embodiment of Mjolnir, and look at how gnarly that is. Nick Klein is a really cool artist. This is Thor punching, but he hits his hammer and his arm just shatters. That is a pretty gross, but also looks pretty damn realistic compound fracture. So exactly who is Mjolnir? Well, his hammer has always sort of been a little bit sentient, so it's got some of that in there. But basically, the spirit has merged with a villain of his that had been thrown into the sun, like long time ago. Mangog. Mangog was like this huge beast of a monster that was like sort of a Thor villain in like, might have even gone back to the 60s, but 70s and 80s. And anyway, their spirits have like merged. So that makes sense. Okay, it's sort of bringing back an old villain in a new form. Anyway, super powerful. That's the kind of threat you got to come up with for a book like Thor. And I like this particular variant cover that I got, which is an homage to the Jack Kirby cover from Journey into Mystery when Thor started. Hold on, there's a super chat. Steve says lots of speculators and lots of stuff nowadays in sports cards, trading cards, etc. Not a fan of them. Did you see Valiant is getting into NFTs? I did. I agree. Pretty strange. NFTs equals a real-life Monty Python bit. Literally less than an hour ago, I got a sponsor request. I get a lot of those. I don't always talk about it because most of it just doesn't fit, so I just don't even mention it. You know, I'm like, no, that it's not something I want to. Maybe if my channel was huge, it would make sense to sponsor some of these things. But you know, for the most part, I'm like, nah, that doesn't sound like something my audience would be interested in. But today, somebody approached me to promote NFTs, and it's not for me. I told them no thanks. That's one that I just don't want to get into. I personally I don't see the value in it. I do understand that some people are making money, but I think it's at the expense of other people losing money. Yeah, it's not a game I want to get into, so I turned that down today. Moving forward, I also picked up the latest 2 issues of Superman, Son of Kal-El. This was one I'm like sort of on the cusp of, do I want to keep reading it or not? Because I like it. It's just that I'm not super plugged into the DC universe, so, you know, when guest stars come in like Robin or Aquaman, I'm just sort of like, okay. But I do kind of like how Tom Taylor writes. He makes some pretty likable characters. He's created an interesting villain. He's made his main characters likable. So I just sort of like, every once in a while I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll pick that up and read it. So this is good casual reading. John Kent, the son of the original Superman, he's a good guy. He cares about the world. He wants to use his powers for good in ways other than just fighting monsters. Here's the issue where I'm like only sort of connected to it. When you have a legacy character like this, sometimes they just don't have an interesting origin, do they? Let me just acknowledge this. Steve, thank you for that super chat. Was a huge fan of Valiant in 2012. They lost me. I want to like Valiant. I haven't been reading much of their stuff in a while. Superman, his origin's really interesting, isn't it? Because he's like, the only survivor of an alien planet. He's an alien that was raised among us, and he wants to be the best of us. You know what I mean? Like, he wants to be good and noble. He chooses to be, and that's interesting. He could be an outsider, but he really isn't. He really is one of us, and it's an interesting conflict of interests, but like an interesting look at the immigrant experience. And you look at somebody like Batman, and he had a really tragic origin with his parents being killed, and he's going to vow that that's not going to happen to anybody else on his watch. Spider-Man feels a responsibility for the loss of his Uncle Ben. These are interesting origins for them. Somebody like this is like, he's Superman's son, and he was raised to be good. Well, he can be an interesting character, but what's his story behind that? Maybe I don't know this character well enough. Maybe there's more to it that I have not been exposed to yet. But yeah, I feel like generally, like, that's a little bit of a problem. That's a little bit of a problem unless you say, okay, this is a legacy character that's going to become the main character, but let's really follow them on a journey. You know, like if you look at a manga character, it's all about them learning and leveling up and becoming better and better. They don't just have a quick origin, they're the hero, and now they have adventures. That's the American way of telling the story. And I think that, like, we need to, like, maybe shift that a little bit and say, like, okay, let's just see what makes this character tick, and maybe they don't need one inciting incident that changes the whole path of their lives, but we do need to see them sort of grow and learn and truly embrace and decide on the course of their journey. So I think that that's an interesting path to take. The son of a first-gen immigrant could be interesting. And I think that they touch on that a little, Eric. They do. It's not a bad book. It's not a shallow book. Because I do find the character of John Kent interesting. I just want to see him grow a little bit more. But maybe I've missed out on some other stories where they've already been doing that. I don't know. You know, I'm coming into this possibly a little late. So, this is easily my pick of the week. Folks, it's been 3 years since we've been able to read Saga. I'm a big fan of Brian K. Vaughan. I'm a fan of Fiona Staples. I'd love to do a deep dive into either of their careers. I've talked, like a really early episode, I talked about Brian K. Vaughan's work on Runaways, I believe, and I've talked about Fiona Staples briefly in an Archie episode. But Saga is something special. This book, it's epic. And, I mean, with a title like Saga, that makes sense. It's been gone for 3 years. You can jump right in, though. Issue 55 here. Follows Hazel. The background of this, there's 2 alien races at war. They've been at war for so many generations, it's almost unfathomable how long, okay? There's people with wings and people with horns. Simple as that. They hate each other. Their war has gone on for so long that all these other alien races in the universe have each had to pick a side, and like the wars are kind of fought as proxy wars, like we did in things like Vietnam and Korea and stuff like that. As in, you know, it's not the U.S. going up against Russia. It would be like sometimes like smaller skirmishes that we were each supporting one side or the other. That's what's going on in the background. Alana and Marco are each people that were fighting in the war on different sides. They met and fell in love against all odds, and they had this child, and both of their governments are like, no one can know that happened. That like just destroys our narrative of why the war is still going. That would just kill all sorts of like support from all these other alien races. We cannot let, so like they're being hunted. Like the whole life, Alana, Marco, and Hazel are just being hunted. This is not Marco. This is just somebody else. Anyway, at this point, she's like 10 years old. So every once in a while, this book does jump ahead a few years. It's an epic. Just about trying to keep her safe. It is kind of adult. Sorry, there's nudity. I guess I didn't like sensitize you that was a thing. This book is very much about sex, and it's very much about family. It's an adult book. There's lots of sex, but it's always in service of explaining where characters are at. Boy, there's just so much to talk about here. That's why I say, like, it requires its own episode. It's beautiful and epic. Do they eat Taco Bell in the book? That was weird, wasn't it? Taco Bell had an ad recently where characters were cosplaying as the characters from this. So, I have been doing a great reread of Saga. You can get literally the first 54 issues in one volume. You can get them as like other trades too, but it's like a good value, right? Like get the whole thing, 54 issues all at once. And I'm like 2/3 of the way through rereading it. So I'm looking forward to catching back up, like refamiliarizing myself with everything. But what a team, what a book. It's unique because it's so big. You know, it explains so much about like the politics of the world, but it also goes into like how people can earn money. And yes, it's sci-fi and fantasy, but it's all a clear allegory for the real world. Everything is like about like how tough it is to be a parent with one working and one at home. You know, it goes into like real like issues that we can all relate to. It's all like stuff that we can relate to. My LCS did, but I am not going out on a school night. I picked mine up the next day. It was fantastic. I burned through it. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. Fiona Staples did one of the chapter covers for the Wallalina graphic novel that I wrote. Well, that was a good catch when you got that, Daniel. Congratulations there. My pick of the week. If you haven't read Saga before, strongly recommend it. You probably can pick this up and follow the story along just fine because it sort of dealt with another little bit of a time jump. So it catches you up to like where everybody's at and who all the main characters are. There is a little bit of narration from Hazel's point of view explaining who people are. But I also recommend picking up those trades because that's a great value. It's such a good book. Compendium 1. Good value. Read a couple back issues. Not going to go into deep detail on this, but I picked up one of these weird Marvel like reprints of their old issues because I had never read Conan the Barbarian 1, and I've also been like studying Barry Windsor Smith's artwork lately, and I've never really looked at his early work like this. It's strange how different this artwork is from what he becomes. This doesn't. I can tell that this is by the same artist that did something like Weapon X and Monsters, but it's pretty different. It's pretty different. And he does a much skinnier Conan than what John Buscema later did. And, John Buscema is the one that became famous for Conan, but Barry Windsor Smith was the original artist. So that was interesting. Also found a good deal on Secret Wars #3, so picked that up. I love this miniseries. A lot of it was for the Mike Zeck art, and it still is. But this is one of the stories that I think Jim Shooter actually did a really good job. It feels appropriately cool and epic and unique, having all the good guys against all the bad guys. And then I just found a deal to get 3 issues of Tick #1 from various series that they've done before. None of these are by Ben Edlund, which is like the best Tick stuff, but then there's only like it was either 12 or 13 issues by him, so not that much. And the Tick is a really, really funny character. So yeah, I just picked up some other Tick stuff, and that's everything I read this week. And this one I think, like now that I remember it, like this one is the introduction of Titania, and I guarantee Titania will have to be a character in that She-Hulk series because she kind of is She-Hulk's nemesis, although these days in the comics she's more of a frenemy. Titania is an interesting villain. Yeah, Saga is still only $2.99. Some Dominic just pointed out. Look at that. This is a thick book, folks. That's a lot of pages. Only $2.99 these days. Good value. Totally worth picking up for that value. So I've sketched out sort of a storm here, and I'm going to just sort of peck away at inking that while we all chat about comic book stuff and news of the week, and we'll see where that all goes. But I hope everybody's having a good week. And let's get into this. I saw in the chat a few people were talking about Peacemaker. Man, what a fun show. I'm watching a couple shows right now. I'm watching Peacemaker, Ozark, that's a fantastic crime show on Netflix, and what was the other one that I was watching right now? Oh, just Book of Boba Fett, which the last episode was great. Last episode was, I would argue, the best. Anyone who's seen it will find that a little ironic, but yeah, it's a cool show. Secret Wars, more like Secret Wars. Titania is in the live in the She-Hulk show. Okay. Why do the X-Men segregate themselves in Secret Wars? Because the other heroes are like, mutants. Can we trust them? For a long time, even like the Avengers were kind of nervous around the X-Men. About the only people that probably treated them with respect was like Spider-Man. Probably because he was also sort of hunted and feared. But for the longest time in Marvel continuity, Fantastic Four and Avengers didn't like think of them as like villains, but they were like they didn't know or understand them very well. The mutants were very, very intentionally sort of segregated from the rest of the stories. It was interesting. What is the pen I'm using? It's called a Kuretake. It's just a brush pen. Nothing fancy. It's probably not even that great. But fairly easy to use. So, actually it kind of bleeds a little, so you know what? I'm going to like switch to something else for a little bit. I recently discovered your channel, as I have also recently gotten into reading comics. Good. Your content is great and helps a newbie like me gain some interesting and useful info. That's so nice of you to say. That's so nice of you to say. I thought it was largely because nobody trusted Magneto. At that point in time, the X-Men and Magneto were united, and that was brand new at the time, and everybody else was like, what? There's even a joke in there that's like uncomfortable in retrospect. They hadn't really gone into... Magneto didn't have his full origin as a survivor of the Holocaust. And at one point, the Wasp compares him to Hitler, I think, in one of the issues. I can't remember which one. But, that's like hindsight. They didn't really know that was the direction that Magneto would be taken at some point. In retrospect, though, boy, is that like, you're like, whoa, Wasp. Magneto may have been a bad guy, but come on. That's going way too far. Whoa. Let me check out my phone. I always like jot down some notes of the comic book news of the week. You talk about crime comics a lot. I do like crime comics. Have you checked out any of the comics from Hard Case Crime? No, I'm not aware of that. Hard Case Crime. And Iron Shell asks, have I listened to the Jacked Kirby podcast? No, I haven't heard of that one. They did an episode with Rick Veitch recently. Oh, yeah, he's an interesting guy to talk to. That's awesome. I'll keep that in mind. Let me see what kind of notes I had for topics this week. Some of them were light, some of them were big. Well, let me start with this one because I don't have much news on it. Actually, I'm going to first acknowledge this generous super chat. Andrew Jefferson says, went on comicbookplus.com after your new episode. Cool. Found a comic series based off the awful 60s Reptilicus film. It is bonkers and terrible, and I love it so much. Great website to go for stuff that's in the public domain that can be shared freely. A lot of really, really cool stuff there. Even a bunch of stuff that like characters that companies like Marvel and DC own now, but they don't own the rights to those old stories. So as long as you're not making money off of their intellectual property, you can share it. It's pretty cool. So not too long ago, the first union in comics was formed, the Comic Book Workers United, which is a bunch of employees at Image Comics. Well, they've already filed their first complaint with the U.S. Labor Board. They are claiming like unfair working conditions, and they didn't go into any real detail about what that means, so I can't really tell you any more than that, other than I was definitely sort of surprised to see that. I would love more information, because I don't know. definitely seems like the employees at Image in general must just not be very happy about something, and I'd love to have an idea of exactly what the problem is there, that things aren't going too smoothly. I think it's only something like 12 or 13 employees. Not that like changes their complaint validity or anything like that. I'm just saying it's a relatively small group of people. But I would love to know what the problem is that makes it so unfair. Do they feel like they're just not getting compensated properly? Or is it like that they think that they should have more of a say in certain things? That's the question. I don't have the answer yet. But it will be an interesting story to follow, so that's why I bring it up. Have I read anything by Rich Tommaso? No, I haven't. Baby Bus says, I mentioned before my love of Golden Age comics before, and I'm glad to see you cover more. Like someone said in the comments, we need an edgy reboot of The Dart with blood and swearing. You know, I was pleasantly surprised by how many people were interested in the episode about the Dart, because he's such a, nobody knows about him really. He's kind of forgotten. But I wonder if people are kind of enjoying the episode and like speculating about how to like reboot him, not just because he's public domain, but because he's kind of such a blank slate. In my episode, I sort of explained like there's just not a lot to him. So I think it's like a lot of people are like, well, I could do this. Like, there's nothing that would contradict that that's what he's about. And you're right. There's a lot you could do with it. I don't know that it has a lot of value as an intellectual property to reboot. I don't know if it brings an idea that, like, you couldn't just tell all on your own. Michael DeFonte with a super chat. Ever see a comic on the shelf and ignored it? You read it years later, ended up loving it, but find out the comic died due to low orders. Probably, considering how long I've been reading comics at this point. I'm trying to think if there's a good example of that. Something I discovered later after it was canceled and could have supported at the time. It's an excellent question, Michael. Excellent question. Right off the top of my head, I can't think of a great example of something like that. But if I think of something, I'll just pop in and shout it out. Something I discovered later. Maybe I'm trying too much when it's brand new. I'll give that some thought. Interesting question. Interesting. We'll see what else there is in news. I could see a satirical reimagining of Dart and Ace. Dart would make a good comedy comic book parody. Yeah, it probably would. Tell you what, let's talk about the big news this week. Anybody that's follows any comic book news has probably come across this. In Tennessee, a school board there voted to ban the comic book Mouse, which is essentially a fictionalized biography of Art Spiegelman's father and his survival in the Holocaust. Pretty serious stuff. And the book won a Pulitzer. That's not something that every book wins. That's something. That's a big deal. And it made a lot of people take notice of comics as like a storytelling medium when that happened. But it's been 30 some years, and a lot of people have maybe forgotten how good a story it is and its potency. I don't think it's a book that should be banned. I think it talks about something very real in a very respectful, even-handed way. And I don't think that there's anybody that I would argue is too young for that material. I think it was possibly a middle school. So some of the arguments, they're too young to read that. I don't think so. It's real. It's history. It's history. And I don't think it glamorizes or gets gratuitous with any of it. I don't think you win an award like that by being shallow or being a comic that's campy or silly or anything like that. I think that, it talks about something very real. And so there's been a lot of uproar about that. Like, a lot of people agree that that's a big mistake. You shouldn't be banning an important book like that. And by the way, if you ever hear about a book being banned, just trust me, that's something you'll want to read. There's a reason it's been banned, and it's probably that it's really, really interesting. Probably. Christopher Thompson with a super chat, possibly from London, or England anyway, excuse me. Keep up the great work. Well, I will. Thank you so much for your support there. Here's the one... I don't want to even call it a silver lining, because that almost justifies that this is all happening, and I don't think it should be happening. But there is one small good thing to come out of it. Sales for Mouse are through the roof. It is one of the best-selling books in bookstores, on Amazon, etc. So this has put the book back in front of people, and a lot of people are like, oh, that's something I meant to read, or... I heard someone talk about that once, but I didn't get around to reading it. And so now they are. Cool. That's good. Art Spiegelman is a really interesting guy in comic book history. He put out Raw, a real seminal figure in underground comics and self-publishing and stuff. Him and his wife, Francois Moulet. Really important people. But Mouse is a great, great comic, folks. If you haven't read it yet, well, I guess take this as your heads up that it's worth reading and worth picking up. And there's a comic book store in Knoxville, Tennessee, I heard, that was giving out free copies of the book to people just to get them reading. Good idea. That's a way to get your comic store's name out there. Good idea. Yeah, I'm not a fan of banning things, even shadow bans or anything like that. And I read into it, and guess what? There have been a bunch of comics that have been sort of quietly banned in a lot of places like Texas and Tennessee and stuff like that. And we are generally talking about some pretty well-regarded books, Mouse, but also things like Persepolis, and some really high-minded, good comics. Then I read a little deeper, and I found a bunch of articles that show that and I'm trying to remember what the name of the organization is, just so that it lends my argument here credence, but there's a Christian think tank that's been funding an effort to convince school boards to ban certain literature, including books like Mouse, books like Handmaid's Tale, things like that. Why do they never ban the Bible or Shakespeare? Those are full of murder and witchcraft and genocide and incest. Great point. Great point, Andrew. Great point. It doesn't always mean it's great. Fahrenheit 451 is good, but man, does it seem long-winded. I could see that argument. I'm doing all right, Jiggity J. Thanks for asking. So, I was trying to find the name of that school board that I was talking about. Not school board, but the Christian think tank that's been going around funding these efforts to ban books. And I hate the idea of banning books. I hate it. I'm trying to find it here just to see if it can lend this any more credence, or at least give you guys a place to read up on it too, if you want to read up on it, and be skeptical. Am I telling the truth? Hopefully I've got some credibility, but I could be wrong, right? Trying to find it, but it's buried deep in my tweets at this point. It's really hard to find. I'll every once in a while skim through this while I'm drawing, and if I find it, I'll bring that back up. But I do find that I do think it's a problem. I do think it's a problem. So another book that's being super, super banned right now is called Genderqueer. You can probably guess why they would target a book like that. But it's a memoir. And I think that that's important to see other people's points of view, even if you don't 100% disagree. The idea of just banning it, trying to say that it doesn't exist, I think is problematic. I do think it's problematic for books. There's a difference between like saying like, this book should be up for an award or should get its own show, and just you shouldn't read it. There's a difference there. Focus on the Family. I don't think that was the name of it actually. Frustrating. Oh, here it is. Hold on. I'm trying to... I found the thread where it mentions... Okay. The Parents' Rights Coalition, also known as the Parental Rights Coalition. And that's a front for Mass Resistance, which is an anti-gay hate group. So the Parents' Right Coalition is at least one of these groups that is funding efforts to get books banned in schools that they don't agree with. So, problematic. Create something like a supervising board to approve comics. I don't love that idea. I think we tried that once before. Let me do some facial details. I obviously took a little bit of a break. But this was definitely the biggest news, I think, of the week. And curious if any of you came across anything local, because literally right here in my hometown, without any complaints, the middle school principal here banned a bunch of books. She had the school librarian pull a ton of books that she thought parents could object to if they read about this news. And the librarian was like, but nobody's complaining, like, and all this stuff got approved by, like, a committee. Like, why is this becoming an issue? I think that's cowardly, trying to get ahead of something before people even complain about it. I guess sometimes people can complain about something that's just and we can hear them out, but before they even complain, you're going to try to, like, proactively just pull stuff that you think people could object to? That's weird to me. What do I know? Let's talk about something fun and good. Let's see. Hold on. Fun fact, the term massive resistance originally comes from white southern states choosing to close public schools rather than let schools integrate. Yeah, I'm sure that it's related. Yeah. I think that there was a Raina Telgemeier book banned in Florida, but I can't remember which one. I don't think it was Guts. That's like her most famous one. Anyway, pretty serious stuff. Definitely just worth being aware of out there, folks, so that, you can see where you have an opportunity to lend your voice to saying, like, well, that might be going too far. Just be aware. That's the bottom line thing I can say, because I'm not trying to tell you what to think for, like, politics or anything like that. I'm not. Having different opinions is good, because usually I think that, like, we arc towards finding compromises that work for the most people and finding new solutions that, like, we wouldn't have thought of otherwise. I do believe that, but you also want to be aware of what's going on in the world and be skeptical and just try to support others that don't have as much support as you might have. But let me see what else I've got for news here. Here's one that's a little more fun. And this is a book that I found out because I did live streams. My Hero Academia. It's like basically a superhero book, but it's a manga book, and it does very well. And it has now sold over 65 million copies. 65 million copies worldwide. That's huge. That is enough to make it, like, I believe as of today, the 31st best-selling manga of all time. All time. That's huge. Because trust me, some of those books have been around for a long time. Let me acknowledge this super chat. Master Shake 9000. Thank you so much for the super chat. If Larry Hama's G.I. Joe could have a crossover event with any other comic book, any genre, or imprint, what would you want it to be? Larry Hama's G.I. Joe. In that case, I'd probably want it to cross over with something Larry has written himself, because he could probably make the tone feel right, and I think it would be really interesting to have like a ninja story, like, some stuff with like the Arashikage clan crossover with Wolverine, or have like he's in Wolverine. He did a lot of stuff Larry Hama did with like Nick Fury. Let's see Nick Fury work with G.I. Joe. I mean, Hama's original pitch before it was like a toy was to make a spin-off of Nick Fury. That's why Cobra is so similar to Hydra in a lot of ways. Snake-based. Anyway, I think that could work very well. Fun. Why do you think comic editors tend towards breaking up famous couples rather than letting them be together and writing stories about that? Fair point. I think that sometimes you can tell really interesting stories with couples. But for some of those like big characters, I do think it can become a problem long term, because you do want to have conflict in the stories. And you can have conflict with people in like healthy relationships. You can definitely still do that. But it is a little more of a challenge sometimes. And I think that they are, at least at the time, they're just like, well, we're out of ideas for having them be a happy couple. So let's see what we can do to split them up, have some drama going on, with relationship stuff. And also, it's that superhero comics by Marvel and DC are very much soap operas. They keep going. It's serialized. There's no end point in sight. So yeah, like they're just always just trying to keep things moving and shake it up by doing whatever's different that's not being done right then and there. Not saying that it's always the right choice, but that's why they do it. You asked why they do it, and they do it because it's a soap opera. That's why they do it. What did I think of No Way Home? I had a blast. I thought it was a very, very fun movie. Jacob Oswald says, always love your videos, but I've been missing some of the more off-the-cuff comedic videos. The Dart was a great return to form. Yeah, I agree. I sort of also felt like, hey, it's been a little while since I've kind of tried to have fun, do something a little silly. So that was me just trying to go back to something that I enjoy doing there. It seems like it got a good response, because just to be clear, those episodes do not get the same traction as a deep dive into a creator's techniques or a piece of interesting comic book history. They just don't. But I like doing the funny ones. I probably couldn't do a funny episode every single week. I could have jokes every single week if I had the time and stuff to write them, because that's just my personality. But I couldn't just make fun of silly comics every week. I think that there are some channels out there that do that, sort of make fun of comics every week, and I'd get burned out just sort of doing the same thing. So that's why I can only do it sometimes. I need variety with what I look at. I need variety. But thanks for watching it. I really appreciate that. Norman's on sabbatical, honey. Anybody watch Willem Dafoe host SNL last night? I thought he was actually pretty funny. He's got a really interesting voice. And anytime you've got a really capable actor like that on SNL, it's always just funny to see them being silly. It's fun. Do you think Marvel could benefit from one big continuity reset like DC does every couple of years? I don't think it's necessary. The older I've gotten. I look back and I'm just just tell the stories you want to tell, because it's not like any of it ever, makes sense and becomes realistic. So I just don't think it's necessary. You just ignore what's not important to the story, and you use what you want to use. That's my take. Andrew Jefferson with a super chat. Thank you. Polk County, Florida schools pulled 16 books for review. Okay, so maybe they'll stay in, including Telgemeier's drama. That was the one. All 16 have LGBTQ themes or deal with racism. That's what scares me. Those issues don't go away by not talking about them. So, And I've read drama. It's a good book. Like, I don't see what anyone would really have a problem with on that one. Like, it's a good all ages type of book. You mentioned you had been reading X-Men and are you reading the current Duggan run? I'm not. And if so, what's your take on Cyclops' character development? I am loving it. I always hated Cyclops, but not now. Well, that's cool to hear. I've actually usually liked Cyclops, although they've treated him badly in the past here and there. Like, there are certain things that have happened in the runs that, like, are just atrocious. Like, they've really made him unlikable sometimes, but it's just superhero comics. Sometimes they mess up with them and they're unlikable for a while. They've done it with Iron Man. They've done it with Captain Marvel. Done it with Batman. Yeah. I think Marvel should utilize their lesser-known characters. Maybe. Been reading Punisher Max by Garth Ennis. Great stuff. Love Tim Bradstreet's covers, and the writing is just fantastic. Yeah, his Max run was definitely pretty strong. I agree. I agree with that. Garth Ennis does better on things that are not straight superheroes, in my opinion. Because I've definitely liked some of his stuff, but I do feel like he just sort of trashes superheroes a little. Like, he sets them up like a straw man. He like shows them at their absolute worst and goofiest, and then is like, boy, don't these guys look like idiots? That's my problem that I had when he would like put a character like Wolverine or Hulk in an issue of Punisher or Spider-Man. He makes them look like doofuses. Well, you're the writer. You're God. You can do anything. You could make them look good or you can make them look stupid, but I don't love that. And I think that The Boys is also pretty unfair with how it sometimes treats superheroes in the comics. I think that the show is really good. Favorite look for Storm? Probably... That's hard because she's had a lot of iconic looks. I think just because of my age, that 80s look when she was like punk rock with the mohawk for the first time, I think that's my favorite look for Storm. I think so. That's my overall favorite. Are you reading the current Hulk series? Yeah, I talked about it last week. I'm not loving it. I like the artwork. I like some of the moments that he's come up with, but it's not for me, I don't think. I think I'm done with it. It might get better, and I'll regret like giving up on it right now. But I don't know. The idea of like another iteration of the Hulk, at this point, that's just not what I want out of the Hulk. I've seen enough different personalities and stuff. So like the idea of a Black Hulk, how is that different from Grey Hulk or Devil Hulk? I don't know. Steve with the super chat. Hitman issue 34 was a love letter to Superman. Garth Ennis does like Superman. That's true. He does. He's always written Superman very respectfully. But that just sort of also shows my point that you can make these characters look good or you can make them look like idiots. And it's kind of not fair to write them out of character just because you don't like them. You can definitely have them make mistakes, but like, he has like, I don't know, it's a lot to get into, actually. It's a lot to get into. What are you all reading that's like your favorite thing that like goes to the top of your stack right now when it comes out? Like I'm legit curious. Like, what is your favorite current comic, if you have one? They should make a Purple Hulk. Yeah. Punk Mambo is awesome. Okay. Let me just erase some pencil so that I can clean this up a little. Human Target. I looked at Human Target, and boy, that artwork by Greg Smallwood is something special. I am with you on that one. All right, let's see other things. Moon Knight, Daredevil, Blade Runner 2029. Current Spider-Man, My Hero Academia. I love that too. Iron Man, Good Boy. Let's see, Final Inkle. Okay. Zdarsky should probably be somebody that I talk about at some point. Crossover and Noctera and Human Target. X-Men and Venom. Nick Spencer's Spider-Man. Anything Neil Gaiman writes. Does Storm use hair gel, or is she constantly manipulating the wind to keep up that massive mohawk? Let me counter with this idea. She can control electricity. Maybe it's all static electricity. I don't know. Maybe it's another mutant power that, like, you know, that's her secondary mutation. Good hair. I really wish they do an ongoing What If series. Okay. Kamen Rider. Okay, cool. Simonson and X-Men Legends, and All Red and Excellent. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, that'll be exciting. Justice League versus Legion of Super Pets. I didn't know that was a thing. That's funny. Deadly Class. Yep. Yes, I have read Naoki Urasawa's Asadora, and whenever there's a new issue, I've talked about it on this show. I love Naoki Urasawa. One of my absolute favorite creators. I admire him so much. Just incredible. Love him. Love him, love him, love him. Cannot get enough. He's never disappointed me with anything he's done. Do I like some things more than others? Of course. But generally, wow. Wowie, wow, wow, wow. I just admire him so much. My favorite overall storyteller, I think. Always makes me emotional, like, by the end of his epics. Always. Did Storm really date a weatherman and ruin his career when they broke up? Yep, definitely. Big part of her character. Read Venom to my kids since they have seen the movies, and the current Venom is a young kid, Eddie's son, and they loved it. Well, cool. Echo Lands is really cool. First horizontal comic I've read. All right, cool. Cool beans. Cool beans. That was a reference. People love those. People love references. What is my favorite Naoki Urasawa book? That's not easy. I think it's Monster, but I will say, I'm saying that first of all because Asadora is not over, so I don't know where that's necessarily going. On a different day, either Pluto or 20th Century Boys could be there, but I think overall Monster, because of sort of its grounded nature, I just really liked it. I've had a hard time finding Urasawa's Monster. Do you think they'll reprint it anytime soon? Probably. Probably. Thoughts on the whole Gwenverse and basically Milesverse going on? I'm too fatigued for these types of books. Not aware of them. Yep. Hot Rod. Yep. Cool. Beans. I think that Hot Rod is a very funny movie. That's my controversial opinion for the day. I hope you all can learn to live with it. I had other bits of news of the week, so let me go to my topic notes. My topic notes. Is Storm bisexual? Not that I'm aware of. Oh, there's a new show on Netflix. It's called All of Us Are Dead. It's a zombie show set in a high school. It's a South Korean show. It looks really cool. I'm excited to see it. It's already, I think came out today, and it's the number 3 most watched thing on Netflix. That is actually based on a Korean webtoon. And if you're not aware, some of you I know definitely are, but in Korea, the most popular way to read comics is online. And they're webtoons, basically. That's what the translation is. You could also call it manga or manhwa, but anyway, yeah. And I've read the I've read the webtoon, a bunch of it anyway. It's good. The premise is the most interesting thing, but good characters. It's amazing just how popular webcomics are over in South Korea. I mean, a lot of people there read them. It's very, very popular. And a lot of it gets adapted into movies, TV shows, and video games. Way higher percentage rate than what gets adapted over here. Way higher. So anyway, hopefully it's good. I have not had a chance to sit down and watch it yet, but South Korea has a really strong filmmaking community, and I look forward to seeing it. Yeah, so that should be cool. I don't expect it to be Squid Games popular. That is sort of like a once every couple of years type phenomenon, but I do think it looks cool. Lore Olympus was originally a webcomic, but the first volume is out now. Sweet Home, I know, is one of them. Speaking of online comics, have you read Horimiya? I haven't, first of all. It's a romance manga based on the author's original web manga that was later redrawn by a professional artist and serialized. Cool. I just saw a commercial for the All of Us Are Dead webcomic earlier today. It's cool. You might want to compare and contrast now that you know. I think I like doing that stuff. If it's an adaptation of a comic, I do like seeing both versions and seeing what they found was going to be the central story and how they interpret characters. I always find that interesting. Just to be clear, Cheeky says, feel like I've been seeing more Korean comics on sites like Webtoon. I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure that Webtoon is owned, a parent company, by a Korean Webtoon comics industry. So I'm pretty sure that's why you're seeing some of that. If it's been translated, very easy for them to, just send the files over. I'm pretty sure that Webtoon is owned by a Korean company. And I would expect that to just grow in popularity. I really think that I wouldn't say that it will ever be my favorite way of reading comics, but it is it's interesting. It's interesting. I did a read along of Invincible with the show. Well, that must have been difficult because they did jump around quite a bit. I'll just say that, Brandon. They did jump around quite a bit. continuity-wise. Mostly followed the early stories, but they did bring in some characters and elements from later. What's your favorite bad movie or TV adaptation of a comic? So I have to say that it's a bad adaptation, but I liked it. That's tough. Bad adaptation, but I still liked it. Maybe Ninja Turtles 2? Right? That's not like a very good adaptation, but I was young enough when I saw it that I still liked it for what it was. I hope that is a suitable answer for your intriguing question. You guys have good questions tonight. Not just what is your favorite this or that. Like that's the toughest stuff to answer, because I don't have like my favorite or least favorite things on the tip of my tongue. I don't have it like easy to pull out, because I'm kind of concentrating on drawing as well. So that's like always a challenge to come up with like, hey Chris, what's your favorite X-Men artist? And I'm like, I gotta think about that one. And I feel bad because I want to give you an answer if I can, but sometimes it's hard to come up with like my favorite this or that. But if you ask me like a more philosophical question, that can be really interesting. What if type scenarios and such, or things that are about things other than comics. Howard the Duck, huh? When you got the little bug, when you got the intro to Comic Tropes Animated, did you have any idea of all the characters that would be in it? Not all, but a lot of them. I worked pretty closely with Harry Partridge to develop that. Not saying that I was super helpful, but I worked very closely, and he was super receptive since it was, for me and all. He heard me out. I came up with very rough, I can draw, but I came up with really just like sort of stick figure type storyboard for it to show him like what I had in mind. And then I'd like give a couple examples of just types of things, types of comics. I was like, I want crime, I want a monster, I want a sort of a Superman type character. And then he had some other ideas, and some of those ideas we'd like also shape a little bit together. I was like, at one point, like later on in it, I was like, oh, what about, I go, what about a Japanese schoolgirl with no face? And that would sort of be reminiscent of something you might get from Junji Ito. Like, it wasn't actually based on that, but like it was like that. If you watch that slowly, he's got a lot of characters in there, and one that he spent time and he did like a whole episode, like a live stream drawing it. It's really entertaining. He came up with a character that he envisioned Liefeld would have drawn. It's just like this guy with like Wolverine hair, pouches and stuff, and he's like, screaming and stuff, and he's jumping to the side like with guns, and he's just, he's going. It's pretty funny. It goes by fast. It goes by very fast. Are you planning to cover Herbie Popnecker one day? I'm not planning on it right now, but I'm always up for it. What's my favorite orientation question? Landscape. Do you think you'll be going to New York Comic Con if they have it this year? More likely to go this year than last year, I think. I had tickets to go last year, but elected at the kind of last minute not to go. That said, I'd feel more confident going if, they said you can get another booster, and I got one. I'm up for getting as many boosters as they think is safe, because I can tell you it makes a difference. I was sick with it like about 2 weeks before I was eligible to get my original shot, my original vaccination. And I was in the hospital for a week. It was very, very, very bad. Very bad. I was terrified that I was going to die. the numbers and stuff that were coming up off of like things were not looking good. And then I got it again, like what, 2 weeks ago now, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. But this time, it felt more like just a cold. It wasn't fun, but because I was vaxxed and boosted, it was not as bad. You know, I still had to stay home because I don't want to spread it to other folks that I work with and stuff. I didn't feel good, but I didn't have to go to the hospital, which is a big difference, you know? That's a big difference. Let's see. Do you prefer heroes with a hard no-kill rule? Maybe. I guess I haven't really thought about it too hard, but, you know, my favorite superheroes tend to be Spider-Man, Captain America, Batman. Those are some of my, like, favorites. And I guess they all have that rule. I don't think about it. No, actually, Captain America doesn't really, actually. He's just so talented he doesn't have to kill much. But he's killed plenty because he fought in the war. And there's stories where he'll pick up a gun if he has to. Yeah. Should heroes have secret identities? Not always. Not always. Or, if they do, not from absolutely everybody. You know, it might make sense to tell your friends and family. And I think modern day, they do. You know, I think Miles Morales pretty quickly told a good friend. And I think that a lot of that started, I'm being serious here, I think it started with the TV show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Because she was essentially a superhero. But she has to have people that she can, like, talk to and stuff during the show. So she had to, you know, like, essentially come out as a superhero to her friends, right? And it worked really well. And I think that like did sort of like open some eyes to like comic book writers that were like, hey, you know what? For the most part, we've kind of just been keeping these secret identities because it's what's been done. But does it have to be done? It made sense originally for characters like Clark Kent and Batman to have a secret identity. It did. But does it make sense to have them keep it a secret from absolutely everyone? Or does that literally limit your storytelling opportunities? Because you have to have the characters talk about their problems to people. Blue Beetle was the first hero I saw that immediately told his family and friends. Which one? Are you talking Garrett, Cord, or Reyes? I'm not sure which one you're talking about. I think you're probably talking about Reyes. Will you cover Dan DeCarlo's work? Possibly, yeah. That would be interesting to talk about. That would definitely be interesting to talk about. The Dart never needed a secret identity. He existed on pure bravado. The Dart was somebody that didn't really need a secret identity unless you wanted to get into like the idea of, well, he needed a job so that he could, like, you know, make money and have a house or something like that. You're like, okay. So I could understand why he'd craft that. But he didn't have to keep it a secret from anyone, like, because he didn't know anyone. And the only two people that, like, he technically really knew well as Mr. Wheeler were his sidekick and his love interest, and they end up in danger every week no matter what. So, you know, yeah. Stupid. Stupid. I don't like it. It's dumb. They should have done it this way. I know best. They should make comics the way I want them to make it. I'm not trying to be a know-it-all. I just have opinions, that's all. Let's see what my next news topic is. Jaime Reyes, yeah. Oh, Substack seems to be doing well for a lot of creators, but I really think everybody can get behind this one. Artist Carrie Randolph and writer Joanne Starrer are launching 2 Substack comics, and guess what? They'll both be free. You can't beat that, can you? Yeah. Carrie Randolph, I mean, he's done work on the Ninja Turtles cartoon in the 2000s. He's done lots of awesome comics. He's done stuff with Robert Kirkman. He's done stuff a lot lately with DC. He's done stuff with Image. He does the book Excellence, but he also does stuff for New Titans and stuff. He does all sorts of stuff. You look up Carrie Randolph and you've seen his work if you don't recognize the name. He's great, really fantastically talented artist. And he's going to do 2 books, and if you subscribe to him through Substack, they're both free. And basically, what Joanne and Carrie are doing are, you can do a paid subscription, and what you do there is you get bonus content, behind the scenes, side stories, a lot of extra stuff. So there is still material that you can subscribe to and help those creators if you really like what they're creating. But they're making it so that you can literally read their story just as it is. You don't need to do anything else. I love that. Brilliant. Thank you both. There's a Substack announced a bunch of creators starting books with them this week. Bunch of big names. So we'll see how that goes. But cool. Always interesting to see any disruptor to an industry, because it makes everybody try harder. Makes people tell the best stories they can. Even if it's not something that succeeds, it'll make other people just sit up, take notice, work a little more carefully and harder. So always love disruptors to any industry. It's a good idea. So I hope Substack does become something where you're sort of cutting out a middleman and creators are benefiting. That would be lovely. I think that they also announced that, I don't know if it's a podcast or a website, but there's something called Manga-splaining, which I just thought was a fantastic title. I don't know what it is, but they're creating a Substack. So, yeah. I love the Substack comics in theory, but I think the format for reading the comics and the delivery of them could be way better. It's very new. There's room for growth. Don't disagree with you there. Substack is great for the super fans. I am loving what Jeff Lemire is doing, and my friend who digs Jonathan Hickman is all about his Substack. Everybody I've talked to that subscribes to a Substack seems to be very, very happy with the content they've been delivered. So I guess it is a good way to connect and get extra material from a creator you like. It seems to work in that regard, and that's exciting. Carrie Randolph, is the spelling right? It is, Cheeky. It sure is. And I believe that Carrie and Joanne's new studio is called Glass Eye Studio, if I remember correctly. Kari is also from Boston, like me, so we've always gotten along because we're both from that area, and we both we're about the same age. I think I'm probably a little older than him, but we're pretty close. And we both were on the Wizard World and Pencil Jack forums back in the day. Had a lot of the same friends and talked with each other a bunch. And I'm just really happy to see his career continue to shine, because I really think he's not only a talented artist and creator, but also a really kind, friendly, and funny guy. So you want to see those people succeed. And everything I've seen Joanne post on social media, I don't know her as well, really. I don't really know her at all, but she seems really funny and insightful. So probably has some really good ideas for the comics. So Substack is interesting. Substack is definitely interesting. I mean, I see that as a very similar thing to, like I've got Patreon, and, it's just a way to connect. And the trick is figuring out what content you can deliver through that channel on an ongoing basis reliably. That is never easy to figure that all out. Making sure you're looking at the right person's page. Absolutely. I think I'll pick up the Jonathan Hickman 3W3M comics if they eventually come to print. Sure. I did subscribe to King and Cheretier's new one today. Wow. All right. So look at that. Like, a lot of people already into the whole Substack thing. That's really interesting. Good. Good. Like I say, I like industry disruptors because it makes everybody try harder to, even if they're like, no, I don't believe in that, but you're like, well, I don't want to lose my market share to the new upstart, so I'm going to, put out my best material to show why I think my way is the best. It's a good thing. It's a newsletter with some creators include original comics with it. Yes, as simple as that. Your Platinum Age of Comics video introduced me to what I think was the first trade paperback, The Yellow Kid. Why do you think those didn't become standard in the industry until decades later? Probably cost. If I had to guess, because I think originally, the comics were originally aimed at younger readers here in the U.S., and it took a long time for that audience to evolve into more than just that. And those kids weren't going around with the equivalent of $20. They were going around with the equivalent of $2 or $3. So floppies were the default format for a very long time until you really got a more educated and diverse readership. That's my assumption. Am I right? Well, fight me. No, feel free to prove me wrong, and I would gladly listen to an alternate theory. But also do fight me, because I really want to fight. I really want to fist fight my audience. That is the dream. That is the dream. To line up about 100 loyal, smart viewers, and one at a time, all in a row, just fight each one of you. That's what I want to do. I gotta prove my dominance. I gotta. Just kidding around. The idea of having a club card is cool to me. Oh, a club card. Really? Maybe that's something I could add to my Patreon, like a Comic Tropes club card. Maybe it could give you like a translator key, and I could put up codes in videos. My friend Hoodie Coco has done that, and that seemed fun. Tell you what I'll do now, because I'm thinking of a fun thing that my pal Hoodie Coco did on his last episode. He did this really cool thing where any super chat, he would open a deck of G.I. Joe cards that he had just gotten. I don't have a deck of cards that I could open, but what I do have is I have 110 creator cards. Maybe nobody likes this idea, but for any super chat, I will pull over a card and I'll read it to you and show you that card, and we'll see what creators there are. You don't have to donate if you don't want to. I'm just putting that out there as a fun thing. And even if you want to give a super chat just to see me read something else, I'm still going to now pull out a card. And so it doesn't matter how much. Could be the minimum of I think 99 cents, and I'll if any of those happen before the end of the show tonight, I will pull out a creator card, and we'll learn about who that creator is, where they were born, what they're famous for, etc. Creator cards, yeah. Creator cards. I'm already fighting in the war on Christmas. Don't think I can fight Chris too. I know. It's definitely asking a lot. I get no joy from this. I would do that funny sumo fighting style where you wear the big vinyl suits. Well, sure. That's the thing. You all get to choose how you fight me, and I have to fight you in that style. Some of you might be really good at, say, like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and I'm only average. Or Indian leg wrestling. There's probably a better name for that now, huh? Oh, we got our first super chat. All right. Sam, we're bringing out Will Eisner for you. We've got a nice little image of the Spirit here. His birth name was William Irwin Eisner. He's credited as a writer, artist, painter, letterer, editor, and publisher. Born March 6, 1917 in New York, New York. He is a righty. He went to the Art Students League for school, and it says, Will, a pioneer of Golden Age comics, was influenced by Lynn Ward, George Harriman, Elsie Seeger, and Heinrich Clay. First published work, Grease Solvent Ad. First comics, Wow, in 1936. Worked for Centaur, Globe, Fox. Co-owned the Eisner-Iger shop from 38 to 40. Created Sheena, Yarko, Hawk of the Seas, Dollman, Uncle Sam, Blackhawk, the Spirit newspaper section. During World War II, created Joe Dope posters and educational comics for the Army. Published baseball comics, Cupies. Founded American Visuals Corporation to produce educational comics, including PS and Army Maintenance Magazine. Reprints can be found in Spirit from Harvey and Warren and Kitchen Sink, John Law through Eclipse, Hawks of the Seas by Kitchen Sink. Since late 1970s, has created graphic novels with mostly realistic themes. Contract with God, Signal from Space, A Life Force, The Dreamer, The Building, To the Heart of the Storm. There you go. Will Eisner. Definitely a great. Definitely a great. I haven't done an episode on The Contract with God. The closest I came to really digging into detail on Will Eisner was my episode on comic books about making comic books, and I talk about The Dreamer in that. And he created Black Condor. So anyway, there we go. Thank you very much, Sam, for the super chat. That was definitely a fun distraction for me. That was awesome. When I first saw the Spirit comics, I realized what Frank Miller's biggest influences must have been. Absolutely. Absolutely. Man, he did a lot of great things with the Spirit. So someday I will do an episode about the Spirit, because there's a lot we can learn from it. Thanks, Sam. That was fun for me. Ever thought about making trading cards of terrible public domain characters? I haven't, but who knows? Maybe someday I'll do a Kickstarter and I could include that as, like, sort of a bonus tier or something like that, because who knows? I am outlining still a comic that I want to hire an artist to draw, and I'd like to pitch it first, but if for some reason, like, the publishers don't break down my doors for it, I'm happy to do crowdfunding. I think that could be a lot of fun. Mud wrestling, you and me in a bar. Let's do it, bro. Let me counter a man. How about some Jello wrestling? Let's do that. Mud, not a fan. I'll do it if that's your request. But if we can move it to Jello, we might get a delicious treat out of it. The world needs a Dynamite Thor trading card. Yeah, I mean, I don't have any sort of like rights to that. There's some public domain characters you probably wouldn't be able to include. For instance, like the original Blue Beetle. I don't know. Like, you'd have to be very careful about how that was produced, because obviously DC Comics owns the rights to the intellectual property of Blue Beetle. They just don't own the original stories with Dan Garrett, because that's in the public domain. The Spirit movie was terrible. I agree. Did not capture to me what the Spirit was about. Didn't really look that good. Don't think the performances were great. I think that that was a big miss on Frank Miller's part. And I think it sent him into a bit of a depression spiral, seeing how poorly it was received. I really do. Compromise with chocolate pudding? Alright, I'll do that. That's not a bad idea for comic tropes. I saw Winnie the Pooh will be joining the public domain, has already joined it. So, if you want to do Winnie the Pooh without his red jacket, for instance, there you go. There's a Winnie the Pooh for you. Just be careful, because Disney will definitely go after you if you use anything that they've added to the idea of Winnie the Pooh. The way he looks, sounds, any supporting characters or settings. Just be very careful. Public domain showdown. Will Eisner card was an auspicious start. Probably not a coincidence that it was on top. No, I'm sure that, the first few here are pretty big names. So, let's see. I've been going for an hour and 36 minutes. Probably got another 25 minutes or so. Any more super chats, you guys will get to see some more big name creators, but no pressure. I got 25 minutes into the Spirit movie and I turned off the DVD. You didn't miss anything. You really didn't. 7-Eleven. So, if I did any stories with public domain characters, I think it would have to be 7-Eleven, right? That was I don't know if it was the first Golden Age public domain guy that I covered, but it was the best. Not that the episode was the best. It's that was definitely the weirdest character, and it's just too bad that I found such a good one so early. I feel like I peaked right away. Storm is looking great. That's nice of you. Let's clean her up a little bit more. Using a kneaded eraser. 7-Eleven meets Dart and Ace. Yep. Maybe I should revisit it, because 7-Eleven actually got killed off in his comic before the comic ended. And he got replaced with another superhero who was like, don't worry, I'll do your job better. So yeah, not a happy ending for the man who voluntarily decided that the best way he could help the world was to stay in crime for a crime he didn't commit, living in an identity of a man that he wasn't, and just sneak out every night to fight crime and then sneak back into jail to serve a sentence that he really just never had to. Not a smart guy. And I think he was a lawyer? I always thought lawyers were smart for some reason. What an eye-opener. What was I thinking? Killed by that brick-tossing villain? No, I don't think we ever saw from Brickbat ever again. To be fair, we never saw from Brickbat again. As Churchill once said, we shall fight in our breeches. That he did. I'm going to make Winston Churchill comics, and it's all going to be a team of superheroes that look and act like Winston Churchill, but are definitely not Winston Churchill, so that, like, you know, I can do that. $7-Eleven wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. No, you're missing a super chat? Oh, I did miss it then. Okay, so I'm bringing out a card because let me scroll up and see. Let me scroll up and see. There was another one. Chris Sears says, camera nerd question, what lens did you get as a replacement? Okay, so there was a super chat. Chris, I'll have to check and get back to you. I'm not very good with cameras. I just got whatever the default lens was for the Canon T6 Rebel. I don't know what it's called. I'm sorry. But there was a super chat. So here's another break for a comic creator card. This is Wally Wood, writer, artist, painter, letterer, editor, and publisher. Also, people know about Larry Hama sometimes, guy that writes G.I. Joe, among other things. He started his career as an apprentice to Wally Wood. So we've got a cool image here from EC Comics. Wally Wood did a lot of fantastic work in the 50s for EC Comics. He was born June 17th, 1927 in Manga, Minnesota. Died in 1981. He was a righty, and his school was the Cartoonist and Illustrator School. It says, Woody's career spanned comics, pulps, men's magazines, gum cards, and paperback covers. Grabbing another card here, because I just saw that we got another super chat. He drew Fu Manchu, horror, westerns, crime, war, and sci-fi at Avon, Mad Magazine, horror, sci-fi, war, and crime at EC, Captain Science at Youthful, never heard of that one, Black Hawk at Quality, short stories for Youthful, Fox, Ziff Davis, Trojan, Pines, ACG, Marvel, Star, ME, Gleason, Charlton, and Harvey. Wow, he worked for pretty much everybody. Ghosted the Spirit for Eisner in 1952 and Johnny Comet for Frazetta in 1953. I didn't know that. He ghost drew for Frank Frazetta. He inked Kirby on Challengers of the Unknown for, for DC, 1958, and the Sky Masters strip in 58. 1960s, he did layouts on Mars Attacks gum cards. Cool. He wrote and drew Daredevil, Norman, Thunder Agents, Eerie, Creepy, and he published Wit's End. That's a cool sort of like magazine with a lot of amazing creators in it. In the 1970s, he worked on Doctor Doom, All-Star Squadron, Destructor, Sally Forth, and Cannon. Cool. Wally Wood. Wally Wood's 20 panels that always work. Michael Aidson has given a super chat. So, here's one that I don't really know very well. Gary Quapis. He's an artist. We've got a drawing of Conan here, and it says that he was born September 13th, 1959 in Detroit, Michigan. He draws righty, the School of Hard Knocks, so he's a funny guy. And there's a little bio here. It just says, Gary spends most of his time away from the drawing board, in his garden, or with his dog. Nice. Gary, who lists Larry Hama, Hal Foster, Frank Frazetta, and Joe Kubert as influences, got his first job in comics doing humor illustrations for Marvel's Crazy magazine in 1982. Although a talented humor cartoonist, his distinctive style of heroic art quickly got him the assignment of drawing Robert E. Howard's sword and sorcery hero Conan the Barbarian in Marvel's Savage Sword of Conan in 1983. I didn't make a mistake. You made a mistake. Gary brought a dynamic look to the Cimmerian's adventures, continuing on the series for nearly 4 years, teamed with Chuck Dixon. Oh, another super chat. Chuck Dixon, the writer with whom he has most often collaborated. He illustrated Airboy and the Scout-related series New America for Eclipse in 1987, Dr. Zero for Epic in 89, Hawk World and Dark Knight for DC, and Punisher, War Journal, and Moon Knight for Marvel in 1992. He also devotes some of his creative energy to various advertising and commercial clients. By the way, these were published in 92, so there's not going to be anything post-1992. So Gary Kwapis, I guess he's very famous for doing Conan. Did not realize that. Let me allow this. And Michael Eidson gave a second super chat, so we get Walt Kelly. Walt Kelly, he's fantastic. There's Pogo, comic strip character. Very, very famous. There's a little bio here that says Walt illustrated language manuals as a civilian employee of the Army during World War II. A lot of artists got drafted into the Army and did like manuals and books for the Army during that time. Okay, so Walter Crawford Kelly, known as a writer, penciler, and inker, born in August 23rd, 1913 in Philadelphia. He was a righty, didn't go to any school. Pogo's creator began as a reporter and cartoonist for the Bridgeport Post in Connecticut, then went to Hollywood to become an animator for Disney from 35 to 41, where he worked on Dumbo, Pinocchio, and Fantasia. Wow, that's really cool. I didn't know that. Walt wrote and drew The Little People for DC. At Del Western, he wrote and drew Animal Comics, Albert the Alligator, and Pogo Possum, Our Gang, Fairy Tale Parade, Uncle Wiggily, Three Caballeros, Barney Bear, Santa Claus Funnies, and covers for Walt Disney's comics and stories. He created the adventures of Peter Wheat, a bread company giveaway, in the late 1940s, and became art director of the New York Star in 1948, where Pogo became a daily strip. Walt illustrated books and magazines, lectured and recorded Pogo songs, and produced the Pogo strip until his death in 1973. Wow. Walt Kelly. I think Pogo's pretty funny. Pretty cool. Did not realize that he worked on so many famous Disney movies. That's really cool. What an era, huh? Where you could go from being an animator to being a comic book creator. Feels like no one would do that career path now. It might be the opposite, but I don't think anyone would do it the other way. That's very cool. All right, let's get back to like just some more details on this this thing. Thank you for the super chats, guys. That's really fun for me to read that stuff to you. I don't know how interesting it is. You can show me with super chats if you like it. But it's fun for me. Thank you. I'm an animator currently working on my comic. I love that, Brandon. That's great to hear. Have you seen Terminal Lance the White Donkey? It's a comic by a U.S. Marine who is a combat artist tasked with documenting what he witnessed in combat and since made a narrative comic out of it. That sounds very interesting, but no, I hadn't heard of that. Terminal Lance. Okay. Pogo was probably the first political satire I ever read. Yeah, cool. That's awesome. Everybody talked with a thick southern accent in Pogo. I think that you'd have to say that like something like Bone, Jeff Smith must have been heavily influenced by Walt Kelly's Pogo. It just had to be. There's a lot of similarities there. No, Andrew, I haven't heard of that one. Pogo looks amazing. Very attractive characters and cartooning. I believe Alan Moore used Pogo analogs in an issue or two of Swamp Thing. He definitely did. He used somebody for Albert the Alligator, but it's been so long since I've read those books, it's not coming to me exactly what he did. But he definitely did that, like Alan Moore did. I'm pro dots. Have you ever considered putting any dots on Aurora's shaved head? No. If it was a dude, I would, but I want as few lines as possible. I feel like I've already put too many on her head, so yeah. And I don't know, maybe I should have had her hair stick straight up, whatever. I don't know. What am I doing? I don't know. Wonder if I have appropriate colors for coloring this. I don't think I do. I need some more Copics. I need to invest in, like, yeah, just a full range of really cool Copics. Don't have that right now. Oh well. I was just looking at my side to see if I had any other cool things to do. No, not enough markers. Got to get some more. Cool. I think that's probably enough for this drawing. I don't know that I can really do too much to improve it. You know, it just is what it is. Like, this is how I draw. Somebody else could probably take, like, the framework of this and make it much more interesting, or sketch out a more dynamic pose. That's what I'll try to do next week, is, like, have a more dynamic pose for something. Maybe I'll try to keep doing Black Heroes, though, now that I think of it, because next month is February, right? Could make sense to do a theme. Pogo with Sean McManus, Swamp Thing. Got Pog, okay. Yeah, I'm not really remembering exactly that story right now. But if you haven't read Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run, it's good and available easily as trade paperbacks. That's some good reading. It really is. So I recommend it. I guess I will put away my cards, and I'll just keep that. So in the future, if you guys give me a super chat, I'll read one of those. Or if I can find them at a good price, I'll get some of those old, like, Marvel or DC or Image trading cards, and I'll open a whole pack and we'll go through that stuff. It's fun to go through 90s stuff. But they're probably too expensive to, like, buy sealed packs now for the most part. But if for some reason I can ever find them at, like, you know, like a vintage store or something, that would, I think, be fun to, like, open up. Just tuned in, and this came out great. Oh, thanks, Mike. That's really nice of you to jump in. Thank you. Well, let's see. Yeah, I guess that's everything that we have to talk about. We talked about all the news stuff. Again, just to recap, in terms of the reviews that I did this week, my pick of the week is Saga. Happy early birthday, Mandela. If you haven't read it yet, Chapter 55 just came out this week. Pretty good jumping on point. And if you haven't read it yet, well, pretty easy to get caught up by just picking up the compendium. 54 issues. $60 for 54 issues. That's almost $1 an issue, folks. That's not even $2 an issue for this. So you can get this for a really good value right now. Yeah, $60. I know that's a lot. Like, $60 is a lot, but for 54 issues, that's not a lot. That's barely over $1 an issue. You can't beat that. You really can't. That's incredible. Just, Saga's a great value, a really cool story. Thank you, everyone. Wow, what a fun show. I hope everybody out there is safe and doing well. Hopefully, you know, as time goes on, maybe I'll get to bump into a couple of you at conventions. Right now, happy early birthday, Cup Creations. Right now, I'm giving thought to going to 3 different conventions, but I don't know yet. But I'm thinking about, in September, there is the Small Press Expo in Bethesda, Maryland. I really like that convention, and I've got a lot of friends in DC, so that could be fun to go to. And then the following weekend, not too far away in Philadelphia, is RetroCon. Maybe that would be fun. So depending on how things seem as we get closer, those are 2 smaller conventions I might go to. And if they have New York Comic Con, I'll probably get tickets again, and there's a good chance I would go this year because I do miss my best friend Evan, who lives in New York. That would really be nice to see him again. So those are some things I'm thinking of. Don't know if you guys are. Once we can do international travel, I want to go to CCXP down in Sao Paulo, Brazil in December, and possibly one of Tokyo's big Comic-Cons. I'd love to see, and I'd love to go to Angoulême in France. So those are 3 international conventions that would mean a lot to me to explore. Japan, France, and Brazil. 3 parts of the world that love comics and have very different comics and a different readership that I would love to go to. If I ever do, just so you know, I would be making a big video for each of those things right here on this channel. Any trips I do to a new comic book store or a new convention or anything like that moving forward, I will make a video for this channel, just so you know. SPX is a maybe for me this year. It's such a good convention, such a good one. So much passion on display. Do you find it difficult to see the entire page near the spine when reading giant soft covers? I guess you could, but I don't think I really do on this one. Let's just... No, I feel like you can, see right into the middle, very well with this, and I'm not, really stretching the book too much. They gave it a good margin. They gave it a good margin on this. You do have to be a little careful with a book this big. If you're going to, really crack it all the way open at the beginning and the end, you probably could, work the gumminess, a little loose, but so far, so good. Yeah, I think you can read this easily. This is a really good value. Thinking about SPX2. Cool. Well, I had a really wonderful show this time, guys. I'm going to take off. Guys, gals, everyone. Thank you so much for spending some time with me on Monday. Or if you're watching this later, let me know in the comments below. Because I know a lot of people do watch this after it's live, and that means a lot to me too. The reviews and the drawing and the conversation of news of the week, it's all still relevant. It's not quite stuff that's if you don't catch it live, it's useless. But I'm saying this right at the end of the show. So anyway, hopefully people have made it this far. I'm going to take off. Could that comic stun a burglar? Yes, it definitely could. It could stun a burglar. You guys were all wonderful. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for the kind words. I will be back next Monday for this show, and you will get a new episode of Comic Tropes this Sunday, unless you're a patron, in which case I'm going to try to have it up early, but this is a big one. This is a big episode. My patrons voted on who I should cover. There were 4 different big name artists, and they've voted on an artist that everybody out there knows and respects and loves, but we're going to break down what makes his work so appealing and so unique and talk about how amazing his career is. I'm really excited to do it, but it's a big episode. It's a lot to tackle. So I'm going to try to have it up early. We'll see. See you, Jeannie. Sleep well. You guys are great. I'm going to take off now, and then there'll be a few moments here of awkward silence as I make sure that I don't end the stream before I stop talking. So, a lovely, lovely end to a lovely, lovely show. Thanks, everybody. Keep reading comics.